brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Tom PERRIELLO. Thomas Stewart Price PERRIELLO is an American attorney, diplomat, and politician. A member of the Democratic Party, PERRIELLO served one term as a U.S. representative was the United States Special Representative for the Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review from 2014 to 2015, and the Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region of Africa and the Democratic Republic of the Congo from July 2015 to December 2016. Born in Charlottesville, VA, and raised in Ivy, VA, PERRIELLO has lived in Alexandria, Virginia since 2011. PERRIELLO graduated from Yale College and received a JD from Yale Law School. In 2002-2003 he was a special advisor to the prosecutor of the Special Court for Sierra Leone. He then worked for the International Center for Transitional Justice, the Century Foundation, and for the National Council of Churches of Christ. Having previously worked as a legislative page in the Virginia House of Delegates, PERRIELLO ran in the United States House of Representatives in the 2008 elections. He narrowly defeated six-term Republican incumbent Virgil H. Good, Jr. by 727 votes out of over 317,000 cast. At the time he served, the district included much of Southside Virginia and stretched north to Charlottesville. A populist Democrat, PERRIELLO was an ally in Congress of President Barack Obama. Although he did not always vote in support of the president's agenda, PERRIELLO voted with the Democratic majority in the House of Representatives 90% of the time, according to a Washington Post analysis. PERRIELLO was defeated in the 2010 election by Republican State Senator Robert Hurt after losing his congressional seat. PERRIELLO served as president and CEO of the Center for American Progress Action Fund, and as a counselor for policy at Center for American Progress, where he spoke out on issues of immigration reform, voting rights, inequality, and campaign finance reform. In February 2014, he was appointed Special Representative for the Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review, serving until July 2015. He was then appointed Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region of Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo, succeeding former U.S. Senator Ross Feingold. PERRIELLO unsuccessfully ran for the 2017 Democratic nomination for Virginia governor against Virginia Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam. He was endorsed by Vermont Senator and former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, columnist, and chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign John Podesta, Center for American Progress and Center for American Progress Action Fund President and CEO Neera Tanden, and Khizr and Ghazala Khan. Early life and education. PERRIELLO was born in Charlottesville, VA, and grew up in Ivy, a small, affluent, unincorporated community west of Charlottesville. He is the son of Linda, a financial analyst, and Vito Anthony PERRIELLO, Jr., a pediatrician. His paternal grandparents were Italian immigrants, and his mother is from an evangelical Christian family from Ohio. He attended Murray Elementary School, Meriwether Lewis Elementary School, Henley Middle School, and Western Albemarle High School in the county school system, and then graduated from St. Anne's Belfield School, a private school. He attained the rank of Eagle Scout in Boy Scout Troop 114 in Ivy, and was a legislative page in the Virginia House of Delegates. He earned BA and JD degrees at Yale University. At Yale, PERRIELLO was a humanities major. Early career. From 2002–03, PERRIELLO worked for the UN-mandated Special Court for Sierra Leone, where he eventually becoming special advisor to the prosecutor, David Crane. He has worked as a consultant to the International Center for Transitional Justice in Kosovo, Darfur, and Afghanistan, where he worked on justice-based security strategies. PERRIELLO has also been a fellow at the Century Foundation and consultant to the National Council of Churches of Christ. U.S. House of Representatives. In announcing his first bid for Congress in 2007, PERRIELLO spoke of his conviction politics. "Conviction politics will make me more effective if I win. The first question I asked myself before deciding to run for office was not, can I win? But, can I improve people's lives if I win?" Citing the 2006 midterm elections, PERRIELLO pointed toward the example of fellow Democrats including Senators Jim Webb, Sherrod Brown, and John Tester, all winning in difficult political environments, with firm positions that cut across typical progressive or conservative ideologies. PERRIELLO framed his positions as, for the people and not for the corporate establishment, and did not focus on partisan divisions. During his time in the House of Representatives, PERRIELLO would often explain his support for controversial votes by his standard of conviction politics. PERRIELLO described his vote for cap and trade legislation as a national security imperative, stating, "There's got to be something more important than getting re-elected," in an interview with Politico. "If I lose my seat, and that's the worst that happens, I could live with that." Time termed PERRIELLO an unapologetic progressive, in naming him one of the new civic leaders in its 40 Under 40 issue for 2010. 2008. In the 2008 election, PERRIELLO won a narrow victory over Republican six-term incumbent Virgil H. Goode, Jr., a longtime figure in Virginia politics who had previously represented a large portion of the district in the Senate of Virginia. PERRIELLO trailed Goode in the polls by 30% only 3 months before the election. Politico remarked that Goode's campaign was impaired by remarks by Goode that were interpreted as anti-Muslim, and by a flap over Goode's tenuous connection to a gay-themed movie. The traditionally Democratic urban areas of the district gave PERRIELLO significant margins over Goode, while Goode won 13 of the 20 county-level jurisdictions in the district. PERRIELLO won all but one independent city, Bedford, which went for Goode by only 16 votes. Ultimately, PERRIELLO prevailed largely on the strength of a more than 25,000 vote margin in Charlottesville and surrounding Albemarle County. PERRIELLO's performance showed the most dramatic improvements over past Democratic voting in the more conservative areas of the district hardest hit by decades of job loss and economic slowdown. As a presidential candidate, Barack Obama also improved on past Democratic performance, but he ultimately lost this district by around 7,500 votes. For example, PERRIELLO significantly outperformed Obama in the district's strongly conservative southwestern portion. Ironically, this was Goode's base. He had represented much of the district's southern portion for 35 years at the state and federal level. PERRIELLO may also have been helped by coattails from atop the ticket, as Mark Warner won the district in a landslide with 65% of the vote. 2010. PERRIELLO lost to Republican nominee State Senator Robert Hurt in a race between the two and independent candidate Jeffrey Clark. During the race, PERRIELLO was noted for touting Democratic achievements during his 2 years in office rather than running from them. In recognition of his support for gun rights, PERRIELLO received the endorsement of the National Rifle Association. He also received the endorsement of the Veterans of Foreign Wars in the race in recognition of his strong support for veterans, national security and defense, and military personnel issues. His re-election campaign was targeted by the National Democratic Party, as the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee sent financial resources, ads, and staff to the district in an effort to protect a seat that PERRIELLO had won for the Democrats by a razor-thin 727 margin in 2008. As early as 2 weeks after being elected in 2008, PERRIELLO was targeted for defeat by national Republicans and by outside groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Koch brothers funded Americans for Prosperity. His effort to maintain his seat was marked by full days of campaigning, including one period called 24 Hours of Tom, in which the congressman held one or two events every hour for 24 hours in the final weeks of the election. Ultimately, PERRIELLO lost by 3.9 percentage points, overperforming in the Republican +5 district. As a point of comparison, another freshman Democrat in a Virginian Republican +5 congressional district lost by 11 points in 2010 to his Republican challenger. The two congressmen took dramatically different approaches to campaigning, with PERRIELLO embracing his short congressional record that included votes for progressive legislation like the Affordable Care Act, and the other Democrat attempting to distance himself from his party. Tenure. During the 2009 legislative session, PERRIELLO voted for the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the American Clean Energy and Security Act, and the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act in March 2010. During debate over the healthcare bill in the House, he voted for the Stupak-Pitts amendment to the Affordable Health Care for America Act, which would have prohibited the use of federal funds to cover any part of the costs of any health plan that includes coverage of abortion, except in cases of rape, incest or danger to the life of the mother. However, PERRIELLO later supported the final Senate version of the bill, which did not include the Stupak-Pitts language, and has since said he regrets his vote for Stupak, calling it the worst vote of his career. PERRIELLO voted against the Unemployment Compensation Extension Act of 2009, because the bill extended unemployment benefits for only some states and excluded Virginia. He pressed the administration and Congress to include more infrastructure spending in the stimulus bill, and authored the Every Penny to Main Street Act, which would have used the money that banks paid back from the bailout to directly create new jobs in construction. He also repeatedly urged Democrats to introduce a comprehensive national jobs bill. PERRIELLO opposed a ban on assault weapons while in Congress. PERRIELLO called for keeping America safe by working to ensure that our military is equipped with the resources, equipment, and training necessary to win the global war on terrorism. Although he cast votes for the continuation of U.S. military action in Afghanistan, he also co-sponsored legislation requiring U.S. President Barack Obama to submit an exit strategy for the end of combat operations in Afghanistan. PERRIELLO also opposed removing the United States Armed Forces from Pakistan. In 2010, PERRIELLO voted in support of the Defense Bill, 2010 military appropriations and spending for combat operations. Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review. Tom PERRIELLO was selected by Secretary of State John Kerry to lead the 2015 Quadrennial Diplomacy and Development Review, a strategic planning process intended to be conducted every 4 years for the U.S. Department of State and the U.S. Agency for International Development. The two agencies are made up of approximately 80,000 employees, with a budget of more than $50 billion. The resulting document, Enduring Leadership in a Dynamic World, set out 4 strategic priorities for American diplomacy and foreign assistance: preventing conflict and violent extremism, promoting democratic societies, advancing inclusive economic growth, and mitigating climate change. It also identified ways to make the agencies more efficient, including improving the use of data and diagnostics. 2017 Run for Governor. In December 2016, PERRIELLO indicated that he would run for governor of Virginia in the 2017 election on a platform centered around economic justice as well as resistance to the Trump administration. In March, a group of more than 30 former Obama staffers signed a letter endorsing PERRIELLO for governor, including Obama's 2008 campaign manager David Plouffe and former White House senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer. They were joined on April 4 by Senator and former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, who appeared with PERRIELLO at a George Mason University rally 2 days later. Our Revolution, a Sanders-affiliated group, would follow suit on April 14. KHIZR and Ghazala Khan endorsed PERRIELLO's campaign on April 19, while the Progressive Change Campaign Committee endorsed PERRIELLO the next day. United States Senator Elizabeth Warren announced her endorsement of PERRIELLO in an interview with HuffPost on April 24. PERRIELLO ran for the Democratic nomination against Virginia's Lieutenant Governor, pediatric neurologist, and former state Senator Ralph Northam, who prior to PERRIELLO's entrance into the race had been endorsed by Virginia Senators Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, Virginia Representatives Robert C. Bobby Scott, Don Beyer, and A. Donald McEachen, Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring, and the full membership of the Virginia Democratic House and Senate caucuses. Throughout the race, PERRIELLO faced criticism from NARAL because of PERRIELLO's 2009 vote in favor of prohibiting federal funding for abortion coverage in insurance plans subsidized under the Affordable Health Care for America Act, a vote which PERRIELLO has claimed was an attempt to keep a promise to constituents in his conservative, mostly rural district. PERRIELLO has since apologized repeatedly for the vote, calling it a bad vote and a bad pledge, while promising that he sees abortion as a fundamental right that should be accessible to all women. PERRIELLO criticized Northam for having twice voted for George W. Bush, votes that Northam said occurred at a time when he was largely apolitical, prior to his first run for office. Throughout the race, PERRIELLO refused to accept campaign contributions from Dominion Energy, a state-regulated utility and Virginia's biggest political donor. Northam has accepted over $100,000 in donations from the company and its executives. On June 13, 2017, Northam defeated PERRIELLO in the primary. He then immediately congratulated Northam on his victory on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.